All right, we're in business. Welcome back to the channel. As the title says, it's not clickbait, it's a serious question and discussion. And this goes, is religion a curse on mankind? By mankind, right? And it follows then, what does that make morality, right? It makes morality a curse, a system of punishments predicated on the idea that somewhere in this life and the afterlife, there's a paymaster who's paying attention and who's going to reward and unreward you and others unjustly. Unless maybe you wind up like Job, in which case you're a fervent believer and he afflicts you anyway. So, nobody's protected. This is like at the end of the day, it's like the mafia. Like everyone's really open for being hit. And what really prompted my thoughts on this was a few years ago, my father sent me an archaeology magazine. And as you can see, it's biblical archaeology today. There's Jesus. There's well, shit. This is actually a pagan coloring book from when I was a kid. Um, and I kind of notice here, um, there's Ignis Fatuus, Will o' the Wisp, right? Some call him Will o' the Wisp, and some say Jacky Lantern. No matter what his name of this, you can be certain. He's a ghostly fellow with the flickering light who floats about on cloudy nights, swinging his fire now faint, now bright, tricking travelers from the path that's right. So if you see him, pay no mind, or in the mud yourself you will find, right? You'll be like those cavemen found in the bogs of Ireland, just mummified. And he kind of even has that look, doesn't he? If you could see, he kind of looks like an old man. Um, and I just bring this up because I just happened to read Charles Bukowski's poem Ignis Fatuus, which is again Latin for Will o' the Wisp. Here is Archaeology Review from 2020. And what's fascinating about this, they find, I think it's the oldest writing in the Middle East, and they question, is the oldest writing a curse? Right? Is the oldest writing there a curse? And so obviously cursed by Yahweh. And yes, you could already say we're already in a Gnostic territory in this old, like if you're not familiar with the history, I can let me actually recommend you something real quick. First, I want to say if you're not familiar with the Middle East, Christianity, Judaism, beyond kind of the shallow mishmash that floats around in American culture, which is to say a complete distinct lack of culture, a blending and mixing and covering up of cultures, right? That Predictive History channel here, this episode, Resurrecting the Gnostic Jesus, is a great place to start. And from there, it's understanding, well, what is religion? Where did it came from? And what it is, it was everything about what mattered most to humans, which was social relation in regards to how we behave and live in life, surrounding the greater mysteries of life, death, right? This concern and question of the immortal soul and where do we go when we die and what happens next, right? So I want to say that religion became powerful, and it's closer to a curse in the sense that, well, imagine getting something so like fundamentally in spirit right, but that completely misguides everything else you think and see about the world. So we're back to will o' the wisp territory, because we could say, okay, sure, there's crazy people who get prescribed medication, yet there's like supposedly normal people who live and walked amongst us, amongst the millions and billions, who believe in the nuttiest shit. And a lot of it, it's a curse. And what they're questioning is, I'm going to go on ahead and read the article here. In March, a research team led by scholars from the Associates for Biblical Research announced the discovery of a lead tablet from Mount Ebal that contains a Hebrew inscription. They say the inscription, dated to the end of the Late Bronze Age, right, which collapsed, circa 1200 BCE, is a cursed text that invokes the deity Yahweh. So I think maybe what it is, it's the first invocation of Yahweh, and it's thought to be a curse. And again, when I said they got some things right, like so as a small tribe living in a hostile environment surrounded by enemies, they would question, geez, if God is so great and life is good, why do we keep getting our asses kicked, right? The Canaanites just ran us down, we got our asses kicked, and now the Romans own us, right? If it was just bad thing after bad thing, and surely it got better, right? Like, and from there, you go, okay, if things were bad back then what's kind of happened since? And surely things have gotten better for the Jews. You kind of go from there, and regardless of anyone's politics or thoughts on it, because also worth mentioning that on the professor here on predictive history, he predicted this war with Iran over a year ago. So if you want to see his lessons on geohistory, he also talks. Let's go. Let's go look right now. Here you go. Right. So the Iran trap. So as you know, the Jews are trying to start World War III. They want to kill us all. It seems, and this is what I mean when I say, okay, so everyone else is treated in a particular way, but these people can be nutty as hell and try and kill us all, and yet somehow that's normal and acceptable. And there's nothing moral about any of this behavior. It's all very primitive, is what we're getting at. And again, it's interesting to see that to its early inscriptions, it's thought to be a curse. And where this gets more fascinating is between modern thinkers like Nietzsche, Freud, and Marx, and particularly at the dawn of day here. Nietzsche is recognizing what he sees as superstition, what he sees as the evolution of psychology and morality in man, recognizing that we have these various stages, like there's the primitive man who kind of needs to be told what's what, right? These are the people who have always just existed to be there, right? Because if it wasn't for hundreds and thousands and millions of bodies there to do the labor, to carry the work, to have the lessons and the education enforced on them, none of this shit would be here, right? Um, and the rest gets dug up and put in the museum and whatever else these crazy people do with the shit. But it says the team believes the tablet to be the oldest extant Hebrew inscription. Questions abound, however, that some scholars have expressed doubts about the team's sensational claims. And look, if you read the Bible, it's a lot of curses. The Old Testament is great. Read Leviathan. There's nothing like it, right? Nobody's got a claim against me. Who could stop me? Yada yada. Like you won't find this shit maybe only in like some of the Vedic hymns. Because the bigger lesson here, in case you guys haven't been paying attention for morality, for religion, for history, is it the people who fail to maintain traditions, no different than the Greeks and the Romans learned, those who fail to maintain traditions around relations, especially as regards to education, which is scholarship, learning, right? And warfare, if a people does not maintain this, they cannot be said to be a people. And this is cue the hatred, I think, for the Jews, because where else in the world is there a people who maintain their identity, kept their culture through all history, basically, more or less, kind of changing with the times because now they got the funny hats. But I just mean, like there they were, here they are. And then, never mind that they own everything in the world. It's just, no one else got to do that, so that so many people resent them. I understand. But, if the Jews don't understand, I would say it's because, you basically curse people from the very beginning of history. And this is so when Nietzsche writes things like we're now entering into a higher history, we're going, I don't want to say we're going back to paganism, but it's a return to our post-moral roots. That's what I'm trying to say. It doesn't mean pagans didn't have values. It didn't mean they didn't have traditions that meant life and death. In fact, they loved it so much they wanted to live and die forever. If you think of the Norsemen, right? They dreamed of eternal battle rather than sitting on clouds strumming your harps, like wherever these moronic, childlike visions of heaven came from, right? Came from the Christian world, because these are banal people. I think they're infertile ground, right? That's why they have no imagination. They have nothing new. And to this day, I look around, I listen to Christians, I listen to Jews, I hear a lot of cursing, I hear a lot of complaining. This is where I can't help but say and think that if I really had to put it concisely on what I could say about Christianity is everyone's heard of the term sore loser, right? Don't be a sore loser. But Christianity is not only history's worst uninvited, or well, I guess technically these idiots did invite him in, but history's worst dinner guest, history's first and original example of the sore winner. Again, that you could take everything, make everything, break everything, do what you want, imperialize the whole planet, get away with genocide, well, kind of, what I mean, do all these things, and then turn around and just, well, our empire, our this, our that, our morals are what you never had that to begin with, is what I'm saying. You only, when you're when you're incapable of reason, and when you're primitive, and when you project your vision of the world, you're small. Because here's what's laughable about the present day men. No different than men 1,000 years ago. These present day men are laughable in the sense of what you think, who actually understands what's going on, who could see the hole in their own head, right? And by that I mean who could see the hole. Doesn't matter. You kind of get what I'm saying here, is that to me it's insane that they ever thought they had it figured out, that they ever thought their plans were going to go off without a hitch, right? Everyone wants to rule the world and everyone wants to rule forever. Here's my biggest criticism, not just of Jews and Christians, but of everyone, almost everyone. Maybe the Muslims are a little bit more humble, so credit to them. But what it is the math just doesn't add up. Look at the Western ego. When everyone, when everyone's afraid of death, when everyone wants to live forever, when everyone wants more than they have, and then they take more than they give, do the math. That's why this place is like this. This is why these people suck. Because not only do they curse all the time, right? They got nothing but curses for us and our future, and that's what they've done. And I haven't even gotten to the rest of the text, so I should keep reading. Um, so the guys interpreted the site to be the location of Joshua's altar, Joshua 8:30. The tablet was recovered only in 2019. However, when the ABR team began to sift dumps from the mount from the excavation, the lead tablet, which measured less than 1 square inch, wow, appears to have been loaded in half after being written, folded in half. It was readable only with advanced digital scanning. And it kind of goes from there, that they kind of argued about it. Scholars aren't 100%, but that it's conceivable and readable and traceable that within religion you find the oldest blessings and the oldest cursings. Nietzsche talks about this in Thus Spake Zarathustra. Verily, my people, if thou knewest but a people's need and land, its sky, and its neighbor, then thou wouldst not divine the law of its surmountings, and why it climbeth up the ladder to its hope. And I guess, curse you from up there. Always shalt thou be foremost and prominent above others. No one shall thy jealous soul love except a friend. That made the soul of a Greek thrill, thereby he went to his greatness. To speak truth, to be skillful with bow and arrow, right? Zarathustra, the Persians. So seemed it like pleasing and hard to the people from which cometh my name, the name which is alike pleasing and hard to me, right? Philosophy is difficult. Thinking is difficult. Not being a superstitious primitive ape who's got nothing but bad news and curses and wants to take from the world with nothing to give, right? And this is one of Nietzsche's biggest criticisms, by the way. He's recognizing, hey, everyone takes, nobody gives. Soon there's going to be nobody left to give, nothing left to take, nobody to give it to. This is the problem with the last man. He's in fertile soil. There's nothing to give to him anymore. Religion ran him dry. The Christian God killed him. Uh, right, that's the past. That's the old history. That's the dead history from which the higher history emerges. Nietzsche sees two types: descending life, ascending life. So this is the last man was born at the same time as the Superman. I think he says this in Ecce Homo, some of his other works too. But he kind of goes on to honor father and mother, and from the root of the soul to do their will, right? This is instinct. This isn't what the government taught you. This isn't what the state, those aren't peoples and peoples. Those aren't families. That's a simulation. That's a false idol. That's just a hollow organization that resents the fact that this organization of mediocrity still has to depend on the greatest and strongest men. Don't believe me? Ask America, ask Putin, ask Kim Jong-un. Little, like, the average person like has no idea. They're so outclassed when they try and judge the higher intellects who rule the world. It makes no sense to me to hear like the voters of America sit here going, oh, Trump is dumb, the media is dumb, the intelligent people who own us and rule the world are dumb. No, they're fucking not. There's a reason everyone is at the bottom and there's a few people on top, and why they curse you from the top too, because they don't like the people at the bottom, because it's difficult to get over them and to get beyond them and to not be swamped by them throughout time, to somehow create beauty and find a mission and a goal despite the endless problems, right? What people thought they were going to be delivered. People thought life was going to be easy. Who knows what people thought? Here's an idea. Fuck what people thought. Their opinions, their ideas, they don't matter at all. There's billions of us. When there's billions of us, an opinion does not matter. An entire subset of opinions doesn't matter. A life history of opinions doesn't matter. So what's Nietzsche's conception when I said he recognizes these primitive apes and he also recognizes something higher at work? It's not exactly what people think it is, though. This is the dawn of day or daybreak in some translations. 15, the most ancient means of solace. First stage, in every misfortune or discomfort, man sees something for which he must make somebody else suffer, right? Think of something as simple as a bee. Have you ever been stung by a bee or something small like that, and you just feel a disproportionate amount of anger towards this minor nuisance? So, bee sting, and then it's like, oh, smash, right? And it's, anyway, no matter who, right? So, dog, animal, woman, child, I guess here you go. There's an American prosperity preacher, Zig Ziglar, one of those business guys, and his take was it's a cat kicking world. Boss gets a ticket, goes in, yells at his secretary. Secretary goes home, yells at her husband. Husband gets mad, smacks the kid. Kid gets mad, kicks the cat. Right? Kind of goes like that. And then the whole world, I guess the moral of the story is the whole world is made Christian and neurotic. So, and which is to say Jewish and neurotic. And at the heart of it all was the belief in punishments and rewards, right? It's a lie. There is no paymaster. This is maybe this, if there's one lesson I will harp on my channel, there is no paymaster. People don't have anything coming to them. Here are your hands. If you can't feed yourself, if you can't educate yourself, right? Scholarship and war, I don't know what to tell you. This is what history has taught us, right? You better learn to read and write. You better learn to keep up. You better learn to not be run over by the machinery. You better look twice when you cross the roads. I'm not trying to patronize it's just this shit is serious, and all this primitive, stupid shit is going to fall away in the years to come. Techno-feudalism means we don't have time or patience or morals anymore. We just don't. We're a post-moral species. And if you don't understand that, it means, I'll say this again too, that the death of one, yes, might be a tragedy to a few, but to everyone else is just a statistic. So again, who cares about anyone's opinions? People's, even their thoughts and theories don't matter. Theory doesn't matter anymore. In the way that man punishes, right? That he makes other people suffer for his misfortune. In this way, he finds out the amount of power still remaining to him, right? This is Marshall McLuhan talking about identity as violence. It's not necessarily dramatic like shootings and terrorism and government terrorism. I mean, the fact that governments are terrorists. What I mean is that he's speaking about it from the sense that when McLuhan said it, it's like just by bumping up into people in the world, you kind of find out who you are. Can you even speak for yourself? A lot of people, they're scared to death. They can't even speak for themselves. If they're not paid out well, it's probably desperation. If they're paid well enough, they probably get by just fine. I think through all of history, there's been a middle class who takes the pay and gets in line because, again, remember I said religion and governments and all these things are about rank and order. So everyone, they find their place. And past this initial stage of punishing other people and making them suffer for his pain, Nietzsche goes on, second stage, in every misfortune or discomfort, man sees a punishment, i.e., an expiation of guilt, and the means by which he may get rid of the malicious enchantment of a real or apparent wrong. So basically, this is hilarious because, again, it seems so Jewish to me and Christian that everything becomes transactional. Within this interaction, I see the scapegoat. So I'm going to you go, pew, pew, there's the evil eye. I've now blamed you. Now I can play the bait and switch and place the blame on you, and you're the one who needs to feel guilty because you're the piece of shit. Yeah, right. See, well, what's up now, right? I didn't have to punch you. I didn't have to this is more sophisticated abuse and torture. This is psychological conditioning of the goyim and non-goyim for thousands of years. So when he perceived, and oh, by the way, and it predates this. I think, by the way, it would exist without Christianity and Judaism. Those just became the main. In the West, those became the main religious mania, right? Because it is insane. So it's by means of guilt of the other that he gets rid of the apparent wrong. So he's still primitive, right? He's still operating from an animistic perspective. Do you see? They haven't changed at all. The masses are the same as they've always been. Always, they've been this way. Crazy, right? Tens of thousands of years ago, civilization was happening. Empires were rising and falling. Egypt, Mesopotamia, right? Things like where now Iraq and Iran are, right? So the shit's ongoing, but it's all the same shit. So when Nietzsche says eternal return, he really means it literally. We don't go anywhere. So it's all the same curses. So this, I guess, what we're trying to get in here is lower history was a curse of the lower types and the mistakes of the former higher men who used to rule the world. And I think what we're going to see for the rest of history is turning this shit out and over. It's just warfare from here on out, kind of like we said, predictive history, the Iran trap, right? That again, if you, as you can see, a year ago, talking about basically World War III happening, talked about it on my channel, for the last year or two, kind of snuck in there. I'm looking for the other one. Oh, the Second American Civil War. There's a good one for you. Here's Iran's strategy matrix. You might want to check out that video. But let's get to the third stage because here's where Nietzsche gives his greatest gifts. Here's where Nietzsche is one of few men who has far more to give than he has to take because basically the people and culture of his time had nothing for, like, okay, if a society created the most intelligent man in the world, don't you think they would immediately put that man to work and use him? Right? And what kind of position and what kind of ideas would he come up with? And how would he change people's lives drastically? Well, that's never what anyone does because in reality, intelligence is competition, not for the most intelligent, but for the people who are in the way. So anyway, Nietzsche's recognizing a higher history, a post-moral species. Because again, I don't mean an evil species. I don't like this is simpleton think. This is why they're so afraid of men, right? Like what's all the concern about Hitler? What that another man's going to become this thing? Like as if there's a Germany, as if there's a World War One Germany at hand where we could just easily create another Hitler. Like I don't even think a Jewish Hitler could save us, right? So let me keep going here. When he perceives the advantage which misfortune brings with it, he believes he need no longer make another person suffer for it. He gives up this kind of satisfaction because he now has another. Oh, you mean as people become more intelligent, most of the apes around us just become completely uninterested. You're not even worth blaming anymore, right? Jesus wanted to absolve you of your sins. Nietzsche's saying that you're not even worth blaming. You're not even worth associating with in many regards, right? This is sociality in the sense that we stratify ourselves. We get in where we fit in. We find our own people. And I would say you can't become who you are without finding your people. And all of life is a matter of finding. And if you haven't been finding, then you haven't been looking. Or maybe you were fortunate enough to be born with all this answered. You could ask the Buddha, though, that's usually still not a good enough answer. So what Nietzsche recognizes in Zarathustra is that the past will have to be continually reinterpreted anew. So this idea that you guys had it all figured out, that you were going to create the final interpretation and way of life that was going to be untouchable, nope, nope, nope. It is my sympathy with all the past that I see it abandoned, abandoned to the favor of the spirit, the madness of every generation that cometh, right? So eternally, again and again, the old answers aren't good enough. The old curses aren't good enough. We need new curses, new blessings, new, not old. Anyway, abandon to the favor of the Spirit, the madness of every generation that cometh, and reinterpreteth all that is its bridge. A great potentate might arise, an artful prodigy, who with approval and disapproval, right, so Jewish Hitler, could strain and constrain all the past until it became for him a bridge, a harbinger, a herald, and a cock crowing. So I think he's talking about the Superman. And if you understand the Nazi project, it was basically that. But I want to make clear here that I really think that all this old world history, the last couple thousand years, like it's dust. It just doesn't want to admit it yet. Things have a hard time dying. Things that go hard die hard. Um, I'm pointing out it's all ignis fatuus. It's all will o' the wisp. It's all a bunch of nothing. The consequences are real. The violence is real. War is real, as Baudrillard says, for instance, if anything is real. But all this other nonsense, good luck. This is the only thing I can say to modern people that's true, that if this eternally returneth, if this isn't going to change, right? So even if we do have a techno-feudal worldwide, kind of Orwellian Brave New World society, or if we engineer society in a way that basically, kind of already seems that way, that like the lobotomy is already inherent to the psychology. This is what the conditioning is all about. thousands of years of conditioning followed by hundreds of years of TV messaging and lives and minds designed by advertisers. So, right, those are tremendous forces. So the idea that to extricate ourselves from this, I guess it's very appropriate to call it a pit of quicksand, right? When he perceives the advantages which misfortune brings, he believes no need no longer to take another person suffer for it, right? He no longer make another person suffer. He gives up this kind of satisfaction. So it wasn't just that I wanted to show you that he wanted to see it abandoned and reinterpreted. He warns of potentate rule and populist rule. So it's not just Hitler's the problem, the herd's the problem, right? All these people suck, but they belong together, right? Who was Hitler? Who was Stalin? Who were these cults of personality? They were the most popular humans in human history because that's what the herd does to the people. Reagan's no different. Trump's no different, right? They only become more impotent and ineffectual as the system collapses over time, right? And there's this empire collapse, cyclical, right? So there's one more thought here, not just in Nietzsche, on the signification of madness in the history of morality, right? Like I said, these people are crazy towards the new educators of mankind, because this is where we're going to begin and end for the rest of time, right? To a higher history, we're talking here. The past can only recede. We can only get further away from those mythologies and superstitions. We can only understand them less in a lot of ways because the originals are gone. We're left dealing with copies of copies. No one was there. Everyone's telling secondhand stories, the same old interpretations over and over again, right? So there's a lot of this that's kind of BS to begin with. There's a lot of stuff still being dug up and will be to the end. So it's funny that the biggest evil of the higher man is that they just don't concern themselves with people who don't concern them. But this is why Nietzsche came down from his mountain, right? He didn't just stay up there going, this world sucks, these people suck. No, he had something to give. Um, so what he says in Zarathustra, Nietzsche talks about the difference between the noble soul and the ignoble soul. Remember, I said that the problem here is that these people are uneducated. They're terrible at math. They're terrible at reality. Therefore, when everyone wants more than they have, takes more than they give, yada, yada, right? Nietzsche's saying this is, he sees, he calls the bad man a parasite. I agree. These people, the majority of people, that makes them bad men and parasites. It's just, this is the new judgment. It's in. The data is in. The facts are in. The new history is in. The higher history is in. It's exciting. I'm excited. Nietzsche was excited. A lot of people are really excited, and most everyone's just terrified. So Nietzsche's saying, he is who is of the populace wishes to live gratuitously, right? We others, however, to whom life hath given itself, right, to be understood, to hear, to see, to procreate, both with women and with art, we are ever considering what we can best give in return, right? You gave much to us. How could I ever repay you back? This is why I said pagan society was all about rank, order, and relationships too. Christianity taught everyone wrongly, stupidly. It makes men, women, and children all hysterical, right? European history is a history of hysterics to the point that it couldn't stand itself and had to die, right? Europe is dead. So is its God. America is dead, and so is its God. And verily, it is a noble dictum which said, what life promiseth us, the promise will we keep to life. One should not wish to enjoy where one does not contribute to the enjoyment, and one should not wish to enjoy, right? So if you don't belong at the table, please don't force your presence. Oh God, the worst thing in the world. For enjoyment and right, it's embarrassing for everyone. For enjoyment and innocence are the most bashful things. Neither like to be sought for. One should already have them, right? So we already know what we like. I already know what I'm playing with. I already know what I'm doing. I can't answer that question for you or anyone else, and I don't actually feign to. But anyway, one should have enjoyment already, but one should seek for guilt and pain. Why? So we can punish others? No. So we can lord pay and punishment over them forever? No. So we can make them feel guilty for being immoral, for being, I don't know, stupid, poor, bad genetics, whatever it is? No. Just kind of get over it, right? Just it doesn't concern us at all anymore. Also, if you're not seeking for guilt and pain, you're just not going to grow. You're going to be a stumpy little last man forever because it's just that's what he is. He's all too content. He's all too satisfied. These are Nietzsche's words from his text, not mine, right? The all too satisfied is despisable. To be clear, what's despicable, what's to be despised? That which is beyond redemption, that which you just look past because it doesn't matter anymore, right? Oh, look, more will-o'-the-wisps. Let it go. Like she says, and let it snow, just let it go. So, right, that's her name, Elsie. Is that wait? Was that the dog? Shit, stupid Disney movie. Let me get to it. Last section here, we're going to read 13 in Dawn of Day. Towards the new education of mankind, right? To a post-moral species. In fact, this article I was writing is titled Our Future Death Boat Ride, the Amber River to a Post-Moral Species, the Slowness and Stupidity of Perfection and the World. And if you want to get a sneak peek, you can start there. So here we go, 13, towards the new education of mankind. And I'm just going to read this first section and we're going to call it a day and a video and a wrap. I forgot the water, so my voice is a little bit gravelly. Forgive me on this last read here. Help us, all ye who are well disposed and willing to assist, towards the new education of mankind. Help us, all ye who are well disposed and willing to assist. Lend your aid in the endeavor to do away with the conception of punishment which has swept over the whole world. Right? There is no paymaster. There is no eternal punishment. There is none of that. You're free. But the birds, it's like having a bird with clipped wings and you go, you're free. And it just, kind of flops on the ground. But that's okay because there's nowhere else to go anyway. Right? Better to try and fly and fail than just, live mute and lamely on the ground. So help us, all ye who are well disposed and willing to assist. Lend your aid in the endeavor to do away with that conception of punishment which has swept over the whole world. No weed. No weed more harmful than this. In Zarathustra, he says the worst thing is that you've come to believe in this paymaster, right? Be it a god or a government or a boss. It doesn't matter. This is the real corruption of humanity, right? To let lesser men rule the world, to let lesser beings, to let primitive beings, the whole species of them take over the world, largely. Anyway, no weed more harmful than this is not only to the consequences of our actions that the conception has been applied, and how horrible and senseless is it to confuse cause and effect with cause and punishment. It's hilarious. Well, it's a curse, is what it is, but it's kind of hilarious. But worse has followed. The pure accidentality of events has been robbed of its innocence by this execrable manner of an interpreting conception of punishment, right? Morality, right? Why did God smite us again? Why did our loving God smite it? Look, it was shitty roll of the dice, man. You lived in a shitty desert. You had shitty food to eat. You were hungry. You had all these other shitty people around you. It just kind of is what it is, right? Primitive animals everywhere. You know, so the pure accidentally, yeah, they have pushed their folly to such extremes that they would have us look upon existence as a punishment, and it's not, right? This is the bad trip, though. This is their bad trip. 8 billion of them going on this collective death boat ride, and they're having a bad trip. Iran and Israel are going hard right now. They're following up on these ancient curses, right? They're really following through because obviously God needs to punish the heathen. So from which it would appear that the education of mankind had hitherto been confided to cranky jailers and hangman. This is hilarious. A gall is a jail. Um, it's hilarious because what the Israels are doing to the Iranians is no different than how Caesar educated the Gauls, right? Or like just like America educated the Vietnamese, right? This is how we educate the world by blowing them to shit and saying you deserved it. You deserved it for being, I don't know, poor or stupid, or you deserved it for not inventing the nuke first. How about that, Japan? Take that, right? It doesn't matter. Like wherever we go, we just bring death and slavery and lies. And that was the game. Like this was the Ponzi scheme. And like you heard my interpretation. I called it the Christianity, the Western world, the quintessential sore winners in history. You've won forever, and you can only complain about it. Things can only get worse for you. Too much, too soon, for too little of a people. They were not spiritual and moral and strong enough to understand this. And by that I mean they hadn't taken off in the ways that the Jews became what they were by wrestling with themselves in the world. These other people, they don't have the spirit or soul for it. Listen to the modern American whining, just barely getting by, right? Who's got time for it? Who cares? Who fucking cares? Who wants to waste their life, right? Maybe you got nothing better to do, and I get that. That's kind of the point with 8 billion people. We don't need most of those. They're not worth any. You can't do anything with them, right? Maybe that's why Zeus will be depopulating the earth of more men and heroes in the days to come. And I'm not trying to be mean or weird or crazy about it. It's just, look, people don't like talking honestly about this. You can understand why. It's dangerous, it's serious. But let's close out on, let's do away with the paymaster. There are no paymasters, right? You want to be paid beside it's you, ye virtuous ones, right? You intellectual ones, you introverts, you intelligent types, right? You who are not of the lower order, laughed my beauty today, and thus came its voice unto me. They want to be paid besides, right? All of history required cooperation and mutual beneficial agreements, and now it's just pay. You want to be paid besides, ye virtuous ones. You want reward for virtue and heaven for earth and eternity for your today. Getting none of that. And now ye upbraid me for teaching that there is no reward giver nor paymaster. And verily, I do not even teach that virtue is its own reward. To be clear, I'm not trying to take away anyone's pre-existing value. I imagine if you hold a lot of these values, you will not have made it this far in the video. So you've already fallen away. You've been shed because this is not for you, just like this is not for you. Um, Anyway, Nietzsche, Zarathustra, his teaching new morality to the world, to a higher history, to a better men, right? Right? Not just the better men, but the best men, because where the best aren't being made and facilitated, the best is lacking, and they do not teach the best, right? So, and now ye upbraid me for the teaching that there is no reward giver nor paymaster, and verily I do not even teach that virtue is its own reward. So being good for goodness sake don't mean jack shit here, buddy. You better have fun with that because no one else has got anything coming for you. I said it earlier. Here are your hands. You have to learn to feed yourself. You don't have anything coming to you. This is the oldest like lesson in history, right? And then also you could do everything right and still get wrecked, still get fucked, still get run over. Doesn't matter. I'm calling it like I sees it though. Any people who do not concern themselves with two main things, scholarship and war, they can only die. That's all they can do. This is what happens to empire. Once you stop empire building, then you usually degenerate into civil war, and that's just par for the course. There's none to cry about. It's like be like crying over spilled milk or the wind. It's just a normal occurrence, another phenomenon. I get it. Never before at the scale, and you've never seen it before. I'm new here too. Technically, everyone is new here. They're just bullshitting otherwise. Um, Eternally new, but recurrent. So this has been a talk on the history of the curse of the Jews and the Christian Temple of Doom, featuring Friedrich Nietzsche and the dawn of day, right? It's a beautiful day dawning. Join us, you new moral educators of mankind. Let's get to work here. And I'll be following up this soon with some announcements on the channel, as well as a few more videos before I take a hiatus. So if you made it this far, thanks for your time and your attention. Once more, welcome or welcome back to the channel. Like, share, subscribe, comment. I'd love to hear other people's observations, thoughts, questions, concerns. I don't care how moral or immoral it is. This is human reality. It's rough, it's war, it's destructive. No one makes it out alive. And that's just it. If we're so fortunate to be here tomorrow to do this all over again, and then again and again forevermore, if we're so fortunate to be here, I will see you then. Take care.